¿Qué tal, familia? ¿Cómo están? Buenas noches. Bienvenidos, bienvenidas aquí a su casa en la Ciudad de México. ¿Hay alguien por ahí? Estamos aquí en vivo en YouTube y también vamos a estar en vivo en Instagram con Leo Severino, pero se me está acabando la batería del celular. A ver, vamos a ver qué hacemos. Vamos a solucionar esto. Un segundo. Vamos a ver si funciona esto. ¿Cómo están? Buenas noches. Son las 9:34, hora de México. A ver, vamos a ver si ya funciona de esta manera. Ya estamos en vivo en Instagram Live con Leo Severino. Bienvenidos a Going Deeper. Going Deeper son unas presentaciones que nos presenta, que nos ofrece Leo Severino. Leo Severino es un escritor, es un teólogo, es un productor de cine, es profesor, es, un gran ser humano. Él es colombiano, pero nació de origen colombiano, pero nació en Los Ángeles, California, y estudió filosofía y teología en inglés. Entonces las presentaciones las hace en inglés. Su libro ya salió, se llama Going Deeper, lo pueden encontrar en Amazon. Estamos trabajando en la traducción para sacarlo más adelante en español, ya les avisaremos. Y bueno, Leo Severino se está conectando en estos momentos. Perdón, familia de Instagram, estaba hablando con mis amigos de YouTube. Todavía no me llega la máquina, el aparato donde voy a conectar Facebook, YouTube, Instagram al mismo tiempo a una sola cámara. Mientras tanto, lo hacemos así, orgánico, gorilla style. Vamos a conectar a Leo. Y bueno, familia, voy a quedarme con ustedes unos minutos para que escuchen a Leo y después regreso con ustedes mañana, ¿vale?
Frater.
Frater, buenas noches, ¿cómo estás?
Bien, Frater.
¿Qué tal, What's going on? What's up?
¿Cómo pasaste el fin de semana? ¿Bien?
Muy bien, gracias a Dios.
¿Sí?
Muy bien, Frater.
Oye, ¿qué canción, Frater?
Quiero vivir,
Sí,
quiero vivir. Está fuerte, ¿no?
Muy fuerte, muy fuerte. Difícil, pero verídico, ¿no?
El video no muestra otra cosa que la triste realidad, la dura realidad. Un video que es muy fuerte para ver. Estamos hablando de Quiero Vivir, que ya lo pueden ver en Instagram, en la página de Viva México, Movimiento Viva México, ahí lo pueden ver completo. También en mi Twitter y en Facebook lo puse. Y es un video fuerte, pero sí es tan fuerte que ni siquiera puedes verlo, como mucha gente me dijo, es que no puedo verlo. La mitad del video ya no pude verlo, me puse a llorar. Si es tan fuerte que no puedes ni verlo, ¿no será que tampoco deberíamos de tolerarlo? Cada quien se conteste. Es un video fuerte, sí, una canción que escribimos y cantamos a dueto Alexander Hacha y yo. y la idea es que el bebé es el que la canta, es el bebé cantándole a la mamá y al papá dentro del vientre, le canta en sentido figurado. Obviamente nosotros somos la voz del bebé, somos la voz de aquellos que no tienen voz, y por medio de esta canción es un grito silencioso, un grito de ternura, un grito de amor, donde el bebé le dice a la mamá, por favor, no te dejes engañar, quiero vivir, no dejes que me maten. Y bueno, escuchen la letra, es una poesía y es una canción que hicimos con mucho cariño porque amamos la vida, Alexandra H. y yo, y la pueden ver ya. Entonces, pues nada, estamos aquí en Instagram Live, en YouTube Live con Leo Severino. Bienvenidos, bienvenidas a Going Deeper. Bueno, Frater, pues to the point, what's going on? ¿Qué nos vas a contar hoy?
Muchas cosas, Frater. Vamos a hablar de por qué somos criaturas diferentes a todo lo demás en el universo. Porque todo lo demás en el universo hace perfectamente la voluntad de Dios. Uh-huh. O sea, todo lo que sabemos, piedras, soles, estrellas, animales, pero nosotros no, somos tercos. ¿Ah?
O sea, los únicos rebeldes de toda la creación somos nosotros.
De lo que sabemos, sí, somos nosotros.
A ver, cuéntanos, why?
All right, first we'll start with...
Is there any hope?
There's always hope.
Okay, that's good. That's the good news. Let's always start with the good news, you know.
It is good news. Listen, this is what we discussed, is that anything that turns out to be rooted in truth has to be rooted in some goodness. There's always some goodness there, because we know that it's held into existence by a God whose every positive act is goodness. So everything at some level has some good. And I know that's tough to say. We talked about the problem of pain. There's some things that are very painful, some things that are very, very difficult. But it doesn't mean that there isn't a goodness that's there, that it's meant for. And so long as we have a purpose, which we always will and always do, there's always that capability of fulfilling that purpose.
Okay.
All right, so here we go. We've talked about the fact that there is an uncaused first cause. And that uncaused first cause, after we filled in a bunch of properties, a bunch of attributes, we concluded was God, which means we have, through logic, disproved the basic tenets of atheism. In other words, what we have proven is the theistic point of view, meaning that God not only exists but is knowable by the light of reason. And in fact, there's something that most people don't think about, and that's this. We talked about it a little bit yesterday or last time in a different example, but the idea is this. In order to prove the lack of existence of something, there's two possibilities. It either has to be a logical impossibility, like 2 + 2 = 5. That doesn't exist because those properties, the very property of 2 and the very property of plus, imply that if you add it to 2, you're not going to get 5, you're going to get 4. So it has to be a logical impossible. Things that are logically impossible are things that do not exist. They're logically contradictory. The second thing are things that we can prove empirically. So if I could prove that in this room, I might be able to prove there's no horse behind me. And I can prove it by the fact that there's a wall here and there's a mirror here and everything else, right? Your senses can tell you when something's not there. Now, with the existence of God, the atheist position, we've already proven that it's not only not illogical, it is completely logical. In order to get to the existence of anything, you have to get to an uncaused source of that existence. So we know it's not logically impossible. In fact, it's logically necessary. So that argument doesn't work by way of proving atheism. Neither does the argument from experience. Because in order to prove that God doesn't exist, you have to know every single thing in the universe that does exist. In other words, in order to prove by experience that God doesn't exist, you have to be what? You have to be God. You have to be omnipresent everywhere to know that God doesn't exist. So it doesn't work from experience, the argument from atheism. And in fact, we've debunked it because of our argument from logic and reason. In the same way, we prove that there is one God, which means there's not many gods. We saw that was impossible by the nature of the first cause, the nature of the common medium that would be necessary if there was more than one, which implied the possibility of creating anything, and so on and so forth. So we disproved polytheism. We said that God is omnipresent and omniscient, which disproves this philosophy that was around in the late, very popular in the late 1700s and the 1800s, called deism. Deism is that notion that God just created, he exists, we know him from reason, just created, and then he separated himself from all reality and just lets reality go and follow the natural laws that were established by him. But we know that's impossible because of his omniscient, omnipresent causing of all things that exist. We prove that God is not made of matter, that he's beyond space and time. That debunks the philosophy of materialism, philosophy that was very popular in the 1600s, 1700s, and even to this day. People think that matter is all that there is, that if you don't prove it via physical, scientific, empirical studies, then the thing doesn't exist.
If you don't see it, I don't believe it.
Exactly right. If I don't see it, I don't believe it. Or it doesn't matter. Or, you gotta show me. I have to touch it and feel it and sense it. Right? We know that's also impossible because of what we've proven about the natures of God being immaterial and beyond space and time. So we've taken apart atheism, polytheism, theism, materialism, and even more, and the most important, I think, for the sake of us, for the sake of the people that want to strive to learn this stuff, that have gone now 11 sessions in and suffered me talking very quickly sometimes and things that are super complicated. We prove that God created the universe with a purpose. That not only did he think, he chose a good for the sake of the universe. And we prove that even in ourselves, our very existence implies a design towards some end, towards some good, which means it implies a purpose. In other words, we've defeated this notion, which is very popular in the 19th and 20th century, of nihilism. I don't know if you guys have heard of that philosophy. Nihilism is the notion that basically nothing matters, that life is purposeless, that life is meaningless. No, it is the exact opposite.
The opposite.
Life is purposeful. Life is every single living, breathing act we proved has to be embedded with purpose. Because if it's not, if any particular act is of its nature meaningless, that means life, from the nature from which this thought comes, is also meaningless, which is a byproduct of a meaningless universe, which means the very thought that life is meaningless is itself meaningless. So this session is all about hope, even though we're going to talk about the fact that we are at our core kind of messed up, right? Mm-hmm. But it's still all about hope. There's purpose for us, for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. We can discern our purpose. Does that make sense, Eduardo?
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Okay, I want to say one more thing about nihilism. Let me think what it was. Oh, yes. And that's the question that people have been asking. How do I discern? You've talked about all of human purpose, meaning the purpose of life generally, from all human design, which is, we said, to know and to love God, right? It's what's particular to our design is our ability to think and our ability to effectuate those thoughts into reality, to actually cause things, to be the first cause. We have this thing that I call, that theologians have called, and philosophers, the dignity of causation, right? That nothing else in the material world has this power the way that we do, to be the principal cause of things. That's not true for rocks and stars. They react upon whatever's acting upon them, right? It requires wind to push a rock, or water to tumble it down a hill, or gas to ignite in order for a star to flame up, or however that works, right? Not us. We can change the course of the universe. We can actually put things into the very mind of God himself. How? By lifting your hand. Everything we do takes everything else takes direct orders just from the pure will of God, the way that he created them, keeps them in existence, and they just do what their nature is determined. Not us. We can choose to catch the leaf as it falls. Remember 10 or 11 sessions ago when we talked about a leaf falling. We can choose to change the course of history by sticking out our hand and catching the leaf, right? Not letting it hit the ground. We, in that sense, become, quote unquote, the first cause of that action, right? Because we said we have free will. And if that freedom is necessary because of our purpose, that must mean that we ourselves, at some level, are the agent, the cause of what we actually choose to do. This is what we talked about last time with our connection to God, our ability to know and our ability to love. God knows, God loves. We connect at the level of our essence, not even at the level of our existence, but it's our essence, our design, our purpose. And we can choose to rebel, to choose to not know, to not care, to not do the good, to not fulfill our purpose, right?
To reject God's will.
And we know that that can't come from God because God's will is unchanging. Remember, he's indivisible. He has no parts. Everything he does is good. If nothing he can do can be contrary to his design or our design. So if something is contrary to our design, we're going against our purpose. We have to be at some level the agent of that cause. We are the first cause of that action, our own mind and our own will. It's an incredible dignity, but it's a double-edged sword.
It has consequences.
It has consequences. We can choose to hurt ourselves, to hurt others, to live lives that are greedy or selfish or cruel or despondent or despairing, or all those things that we should know at some level. We know it at our hearts are not what we are meant for. Okay, so that's the big picture. Now we're going to talk about two smaller picture items. One, our very purpose. We're going to talk about our very purpose, individual purpose, from here on for the next hour. I don't know however many sessions, however many we do, it's always going to come back to this. How do I fulfill my individual purpose? If my general purpose is to know and to love God, how do I fulfill it? And the answer in short is this. You fulfill it with the very properties that God gave us. God made us individually to have not only intellects, but my intellect, and Eduardo's intellect, and Jess's intellect, and Lupita's intellect, and Katie's intellect. I'm just reading the names from the comments. And Noel's intellect. All of them are individual. And not only those intellects, but that ability to cause doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in the circumstances within which God decided to create us. He had to have created us the second that we came into existence with our own individual purpose. So he determined the circumstances upon which we were created, the time, the place, etc., etc. All that is held together and caused to exist by his positive will. In other words, it's not only our general purpose to know and love God, it's the way your intellect was crafted, the way your will was crafted, the circumstances around you particularly, the way your emotions work, the way your memory works, the way your imagination works, the way all these things that we're going to talk about that we're embedded with in our design, the way all of those work, the way all of those exist, the way we look, the way we sound, the way we can articulate, all of those, we know at some level were in seed form given to us by God precisely to fulfill our purpose. Does that make sense, Eduardo? Are you with me?
Yes.
It's not just a generic purpose, it's a particular purpose. So the goal then is this. How can we turn all of these attributes towards God? How can we use our intellect to know the truth, which we know comes from him? How can we use our emotions, our bodies, our circumstances, our space, and our time to allow ourselves to cause things in reality that are in line with our purpose and God's, that connect us to him? That's going to be all the rest of the sessions. That was the one small bucket we're going to talk about. The next one is, unfortunately, everything I just said is very difficult for us, right? It's very difficult for us.
Why?
Precisely because something must have gone wrong. And here's how it goes. At first, there's a question. If God makes a watch and its purpose is to tell time, will that watch tell time, Eduardo? Will it tell time if God makes it?
Perfect.
Why? How do you know that? And it will tell it perfectly. Why?
Well, because he's perfect and he doesn't make mistakes.
Exactly right.
And
God
because
is uncaused.
if he creates something with a purpose, it's going to be fulfilled.
The very nature of the creation implies a purpose. And the purpose is linked to his design. And he is causing both the design and the purpose, which means it has to be perfect to his design because it was created. Hopefully we don't need to repeat this too much because we've talked about that at length. So if God makes a watch, it would have no difficulty telling time. In fact, it would tell time perfectly. If the watch doesn't tell time, something has gone terribly wrong. Could God have willed that? Not relative to his design. Same with us. When he made us, he made us with our design. What's our design? To know and to love him. So when he first made us, we must have been made perfect to our design, perfectly as planned. In other words, he must have made us in a way that we had no difficulty knowing him, knowing the truth, and loving him, causing good things, choosing the good lollipops, choosing good things. Are we that way still? I think if we examine ourselves, we can instantly know,
no,
I
don't
we're
think
not.
so.
Something's gone wrong, right? Even in these sessions, there's so many questions about the nature of God, the nature of our purpose. We find things that if we're honest in ourselves that we know, that's not the way I'm designed for. That's not my purpose. This is something, this little bit of selfishness that I had, or this little duplicity that I had, or this little cruelty that I had, or the fact that I didn't do something that's super healthy. All
Right.
those things we know can't be in line with our design because they're not for our good.
Yeah. It's almost like you have an inclination to do the opposite of what you were created to be.
And that's exactly right. Something has gone wrong, and we can recognize that. We are now creatures that are, C.S. Lewis said, ill-adapted to the universe. We're not the way we're supposed to be. But not because God made us so, but because something must have gone wrong of our own. That ability to cause must have been twisted. We know he gave us our free will, which has that double-edged sword. It has that possibility of rejecting God and not doing what's good. But as Eduardo said, at some point, doing good must have been very easy for us. Knowing the truth must have been very easy for us. But man is not that anymore. We notice that we're ill-adapted to this fixed universe. Not because God made us so, but because we must have made ourselves so.
So it's like we're broken.
Exactly right. We are that broken clock, right?
We're the broken
God
clock.
makes all things good, and for the sake of their goodness. One of the good things he made is our free will, the free will of us rational creatures. But by its very nature, it includes the possibility of evil, of going contrary to their nature. Remember we talked about the elbow? If our nature, our design is meant to bend this way, something must have happened to bend the other way and actually break our very nature itself. Creatures at some point, humans, availing themselves of the possibility of going against their nature, must have gone against their nature, causing violence to that very nature. And then chickens don't beget monkeys. If we can call this the fall, if we are no longer the way we were originally designed, if at some point free will was used to go contrary to the nature of a created man, and that nature continued to exist in a broken form, then it must have begotten further people with that broken, fallen nature. Well, that's us. Now, of course, what I'm talking about here, we all know, is the Jewish Christian story of an apple and disobedience and Adam and Eve, and we'll talk about all that. But before, let's back up. We talked in the beginning of God exists, anti-atheism, and anti-polytheism, that there had to be one God. And we didn't talk about anti-pantheism, that God and nature aren't one. God is separate from nature, wholly separate from nature, and yet connected to nature. Nature is not a God. And anti-materialism, that there's an immaterial spirit, and anti-nihilism, that there's a purpose, right? Well, for an entire millennia after millennia, this was actually known by one people. Before the philosophers like Aristotle and Plato discerned this stuff, when the entire world at the time in created history believed in multiple gods or in anthropomorphic gods and non-transcendent gods or in deistic gods and those sort of things, there was one people,
chosen people,
who called themselves the chosen people, who didn't even claim to deductively prove this. They didn't start with a leaf falling from a tree and say, let's figure this out, one on cup. They just had it. And they said, you know what? Not only do we have it, we don't need to prove it. It was told to us by God himself. Now, make what we will of the evidence, but I think it's pretty strong. This is the people who for the longest time had no written word. They were an old tradition, no land, no standing army, and had a particular sort of writing where it was very confessional, unlike all the other writings that we had that were either much more dry or much more allegorical. It was an incredible story. And of course, I'm talking about the Jewish people. And in their tradition, they concluded and almost taken it for granted all the things that we've painstakingly proven. And they have the story of there was a time when God made people and they were perfect. And they called them Adam and Eve. And Adam in the Hebrew actually means humanity, all of humanity. And Eve means coming of Adam, of humanity. So they represented all of humanity. And the story goes that from the moment they became aware of God, they had that naked choice, that naked possibility, which we know has to be deductively true. We exist, which means there must have been some people that existed before us. Even if you can't prove it by science and by material experimentation, I promise you, every single person listening to me had a great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And going all the way back, there had to have been a first and a second. And talking about what we're talking about here, they must have been perfect in their design. And they had the possibility to go against it. That story seems to make a lot of sense. And afterwards, like I said, chickens don't beget monkeys. Fallen human nature begot fallen human nature. And this is us. When we wake, we may take the new day and lay it at God's feet. We may say, I believe God exists and I want to try to live in what is true and choose what is good today. But before we've had breakfast, somehow it becomes our day, right? And God's share in it is felt as a kind of tribute, which we kind of must pay out, right? Of our own pocket, if you will, right? A deduction from our time, taken from our space, right? We want something that ought to be ours. But here's the thing. That's a lie. There's nothing here that is truly, fully ours. Everything that exists comes directly from the causal power of God. Thus, all day long, every day of our life, we at some level recognize that we're slipping, sliding, falling away as if God to us is like a smooth, inclined plane on which there's no resting. And we keep trying to climb up and we slide back and we climb up and we slide back. But remember, God couldn't have made us so. God doesn't will that for us. The gravitation away from God, the journey towards ourselves and away from Him as if He doesn't exist, it must be a product of something in our nature that doesn't come from God. That's the story of the fall. And hopefully that makes sense. A broken clock is what we are. Not because God broke it, but because somewhere our ancestors did violence to their very nature, separated themselves from God, not at the level of existence. If God was just pure justice, nothing else in this universe exists that doesn't follow perfectly the will of God. We might have ceased to exist. Yet in our broken way, He allowed us to continue. And by the way, oh happy fault, because allowing us to continue allows us the grace and the possibility to not only have a purpose, but to fulfill it.
To come back again to our original plan.
Exactly right. And this is going to be what we're going to be talking about from here on for the next remainder. First, we're going to explore what that must have been like. What can we know? What can we deduce about our original ancestors? What can we know just from what we've taught? And how does that relate to us? Secondly, what can we look in ourselves? Where are we precisely broken? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, we're going to conclude this. A broken clock can't fix itself.
Impossible.
Watchmaker has to come into the clock, tinker with it. And that's going to be the story we're going to get to. All right, folks? Hopefully that made sense, and hopefully that was helpful. And let's open it up to some questions. Eduardo, any thoughts before we open up to some questions?
No, this is incredible because in some point, of course, we can do a lot of things to improve ourselves, but not at the level of fixing our fallen nature. Someone has to come and fix it.
Exactly right.
And that someone
there has to be a bridge.
Is our creator.
There has to be a bridge between God and man. Mm-hmm. All right, here we go. Someone, Gabos asked, how would you explain that to someone who firmly doesn't believe in any God? Well, I wouldn't start with this. I would start with a leaf falls from a tree and the existence and the possibility of truth. So if they're not available, these recordings, we're going to start them again on a podcast or get my book. And I start from basically nothing, get into the proof of the existence of God. The stuff that we're talking about now is actually going to be in the second and the third.
Yeah, please get Leo's book, Going Deeper, on Amazon. It's in English, but it's going to be in Spanish very soon. I will let you know when. And we are going to actually, as soon as I get the new equipment where we can see at one camera, and then we can be live on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. We're going to start everything from zero again in 10 days. I think I will let you know. So you can all record it, and it's going to be recorded here. It's going to be on YouTube as well. So you can have the 40 sessions, and you can send those 40 sessions to your friends who doesn't believe in God, and it's going to be amazing, because you can prove the existence of God by reason, without a question, without a doubt. And Leo already proved that 10 sessions ago, but it was impossible for us, because Instagram live, it lasts only for 24 hours. So we're going to do the whole thing again, and very soon. In the meantime, we're going to continue doing this. And so what's the conclusion? You already said it. You have any questions? And what's going to happen tomorrow, Frater?
Oh, there's a bunch of questions. Let's take some of them, Frater. Can you hang out for a few
minutes? Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, someone just asked, our ZRK asked, they said, great setup for next session. Thank you. He said, but by the way, when is our next session? We're going to try to do them daily, but Eduardo's a very, very, very busy man. He has a record he just released. He's out trying to save the world, trying to save babies, trying to save lives. He's out praying rosaries. He's doing all kinds of stuff. So it's going to be up to Eduardo. I remain at his humble disposal.
Very likely tomorrow at 9:30, we are going to be doing this live again on Instagram and on YouTube. Too bad that you can see my friend Leo, who is Leo? You can see. Say hi to YouTube, Leo.
Hey, everybody.
Where are you?
I'm in New York.
This is Leo Severino, my friend and business partner and brother. Okay, so let's continue this. Very soon you will see him.
La Negra asked, how can we break those chains? I think she's referring to the chain of how our inclinations are against what is truly good for us. That's what we're going to talk about. But the short answer is there's a thing called virtue. We can acquire the habit towards the true and the good. And we'll discuss that at length. Necesitamos el relojero para repararnos. Exactamente, Marisol. The clockmaker. Oh, thank you guys for the lovely affirmations. I'm seeing a lot of positive comments. I appreciate it. Oh, Zeta just got my book. Yay.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Someone said, Eduardo, gracias por compartir todo esto. Let me see if there's any more questions. A lot of comments, not seeing a lot of questions. Let's see. Was that actually that clear today, Frater? There's not a lot of questions.
Well, don't be afraid to ask some questions. And let me see if there are any questions here on YouTube.
Okay. Here we go. I know there's obviously first something. But the story of Adam and Eve always gets me. This is from Arwen Reyes. How can they be the first only people, have a child, and child goes to live with the people of another land? Well, so this is interesting. I read actually a scientific study. I think it was out of one of the UC schools. That actually maybe it was Penske, a mathematician. But anyways, they're finding that the way our genomes work, that there actually had to have been an initial common original ancestor, and that at the time, in other words, going back in time from how many people exist now, from where we think that there was originally people, it must have trickled down in time to an original source. But the answer, in short, is those people must have had kids, and they must have had both male and female kids. And at the time, the male and female kids would become husband and wife. They would have relations, and thus they would come. So they must have had the capability to have a lot of kids, and a lot of kids had to have the capability to breed amongst themselves. Sounds crazy to us, but it was a far different time, obviously. Let's see.
Any other questions? Familia, ¿alguna otra pregunta?
Eduardo, Milena Castillo says, you need to learn all this stuff and be able to speak it in Spanish so everyone can understand.
I know. I will do that. I promise you.
He knows all this stuff.
Yeah.
He just has to do it. I'm his crutch.
I will do that later. I need to train more because Leo has been studying this for like 30 years, so or more, and he's really he has a gift. He's doing an amazing. He's very gifted on explaining all these presentations. I'm a student. I'm learning, but I promise that as soon as I feel like ready to do something like something like this in Spanish, I will. But in the meantime, we have the teacher.
Well, thank you, Pat. That was very nice. Norma is asking, why would our nature want to sin against God? We know it could destroy us forever. Well, Norma, it's the same question that we ask. First, we're disinclined by our very nature. Turning towards God is very difficult for us. And secondly, it's the same reason that you and I have done things that we're not proud of. Sources of temptation. Some of them are within ourselves, and we'll talk about all that. Let's see. Oh, someone ordered 2 copies of my book, one to give away. Oh, God bless you. But we are never fully repaired, right? Someone asked, Davila. Depends what you mean by fully repaired. We're actually called, God himself tells us, to be perfect, as our Heavenly Father is perfect. So there's a certain sense of perfection that we're called to in this world. We will never be rid of our fallen nature. Our nature is fixed in as much as it is our nature. But there's a thing that is even above our nature that can elevate us beyond our nature. We'll talk about that. A supernatural gift that God can give us. For those of you who know what I'm talking about. Well, I teach about conversion. I think we're talking about that, right? At least conversion from not truth to truth, from atheism to theism, etc.
Metanoia.
How do you deal with the guilt of not wanting to do what is necessary to fix ourselves? Okay, that's a weighted question. How does God see it? Well, that's a deep question. So here we go. The guilt of not wanting to do what is necessary to fix ourselves might be a double-edged sword. If you mean by guilt, despair, there should be no room for that. There's always a purpose. There's always the possibility of the good. And sometimes that despair, that very emotion is what clogs us. It blocks us from being able to see the good. In fact, the very definition of sorrow is that it doesn't focus on an evil, on a thing that's bad that we don't like. So that guilt, if it means this kind of despairing, it's not going to be helpful. We have to try to find the good in it, see the good, see that there's a purpose, see that there's a reason to get past it. How does God see it? He sees it the way that it is. And if by that question you mean how does God judge us, he's going to judge us relative to how much we know and how strong and how fixed our will is. And we'll talk about that as well. Is the story of Adam and Eve a fable, a way to try to explain how we came into existence? Well, we know there had to be our first parents, and we're going to go deep into that story because it seems like there's so much truth and wisdom there. We'll talk about that next time, I promise you.
Do you think, Leo, next time we should, if we are going to be focusing on Adam and Eve, should we bring a Bible?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, we should have a Bible with you, at least the Old Testament, so we have the book of Genesis there. We can go.
Because then give it easier, so you can explain to us, like if we can, start reading, and each chapter and verse. I think it's going to be even more deeper richness to our soul and our knowledge.
I think that's a great idea. Arwen's asking, not to do with the talk tonight, how are you both doing right now, health and mind? How are you, brother? You doing all right, health-wise?
Thank God, yes, gracias a Dios. Estamos bien. Un poquito de alergia que traía en la garganta, pero ya estoy saliendo de eso. Gracias.
I'm thanks be to God, I'm good. All me and my family, everyone's healthy, thanks be to God. By way of the mind, well, this really helps out, but hopefully we all have that grace, that perspective to see that good will come of this as well.
Gracias por preguntar y espero que también ustedes y su familia estén bien en su casa.
Okay, let's see. We'll go a couple more. Carla, Leo, how did you find your individual purpose? Well, we kind of talked about that generally, right? Eduardo said that he invited me to come and talk to you guys. In that invitation, all kinds of things could have been discerned. Do I know what I'm talking about? Has God given me the intellect to understand this? Am I prepared? Are the circumstances such that it makes sense? All those sorts of things are taken into account for the sake of the particular purpose relative to just getting on Instagram Live. That sort of discernment is the sort of discernment we should all be making throughout the day.
In everything that we do. What is the purpose in every single thing that we do?
Right.
So we don't waste time, so we can just focus on elevating ourselves every single time in glorifying our Creator, God.
So it's constant. So long as we're in space and time, it's going to be a constant fulfilling of our purpose. So long as we have the capability to cause, there's that possibility of using our design for that good. Now, but I think, I'm not being coy, but I think what you're saying is most people think of individual purpose like Eduardo is an actor, a singer, I'm a writer, a producer, or I'm I try to be a philosopher and a theologian when I'm writing books or talking to people. If you mean that particular purpose, we're going to talk about that. We're going to see that there's actually different states in our life. There's a state of our office, which is kind of our job and what we do. There's a state of our family, of our vocation, whether we're married, whether we're not married. Then there's a state of our souls, and all those have a different calculus. Mm-hmm. So it's a multi-layered question. Let's see. Oh, and Norma asked, why wouldn't we just live in a closet so we wouldn't sin against God? Norma, no, that's exactly the opposite. We'd be sinning by living in that closet and not going out and using the talents that God gave us for the good that could be achieved. No, we don't live in fear. It's the opposite. God is going to give us the power and the ability to go out and actually do the good.
Es como la parábola, ¿no? De los talentos, que el que los enterró, porque Dios es muy justo y es muy severo, mejor los voy a enterrar. Y cuando llegó fue el que peor le fue, ¿no?
Exactly right. Oh, look, this is a good one from AIMZRK. Is there a second one of your questions? Here we go. Would Adam and Eve have sinned without the devil's enticement? Very, very good question. We'll talk about that next time. But the short answer is, could the temptation to go contrary to the will of God come from within the created beings of Adam and Eve, of our first parents? The answer is
impossible.
No. There's nothing in them that would have at all been a temptation because everything was perfect.
It was perfect.
Exactly right. So there must have been something outside that existed that had an intellect and some ability to cause. Talk about that. So if we know a lot, God will judge us harder. God's going to judge relative to what we do with that knowledge. Mm-hmm. That knowledge is meant not for the sake of being judged harder. That the more we know a thing, the more we can love a thing.
Yeah.
Right? So let's not look at just the negative side of it. Let's look at the positive side.
But at the same time, the more you know, the more responsibilities you have.
Yeah. M. Jimenez asks, why does God make our brains not fully developed until 25? We make so many stupid choices when we are young. Well, okay. Remember, we're only going to be held responsible for what we know and how developed our will is. I don't think that that moral choices are held until you're 25. I actually have met some 16, 17-year-old young men who are more mature because they're more grounded in reality and in God and truth and good than most 40-year-old people. And there's plenty of examples of saints throughout history who at 13 and 14 were crushing it. So I don't think that's necessarily the case. M. Carrera Cruz dice, Max Sherling, por favor, domina pronto el español. Siento que me estoy perdiendo una gran conversación. Saludos. Lo siento, Eduardo lo puede tener en español. Ojalá uno de estos días que se
ojalá
lance, ¿verdad? All right, última pregunta, vamos a ver. Let's see. Lots of comments. I'm not seeing many questions. Scroll through a few more. Okay, here we go. Do you think Eve's persuasion of Adam depicts, this is from Sarah, the persuasive nature of women in general? Fantastic question.
That's a good one.
So, just like we said, there's individual purpose. Each of us, the way we're created, we're going to see there's also individual purpose and individual skills and perfections in both male and female. And there's a certain sense where a female has a persuasive, empathetic sense that is missing in men, and we see that from our experience, and we'll talk about that, right? Great stuff, guys. Thank you so much for the question. Thank you so much for the time. Eduardo, always thank you, and hopefully we can do this tomorrow.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Frater. Thank you, my friends from YouTube and Instagram. Buenas noches. Nos vemos mañana en el Rosario por el Mundo a las 2 de la tarde y a las 9:30, Dios mediante, hora de México, 9:30 Mexico time. Going deeper with Leo Severino, God willing. And thank you so much again. I hope you are doing great. Stay safe, stay home. Stay safe, stay home. God bless you, everyone. Love you. Gracias, Leo, por tu tiempo.
And if anyone has any questions, you can what it's called, direct message. I think is that what it's called.
Yeah.
Or just send me via the app, Instagram. Send me a question.
Yeah, that actually that would be amazing because then you can read them and answer tomorrow.
Thank you, Sarah and Olivia, Coco. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Gracias, Frater. Buenas noches.
Igual, brother. Abrazo.
Listo. Esto ya se terminó. Gracias, familia. Él fue Leo Severino, escritor, productor de cine, guionista, abogado, filósofo, teólogo, profesor y un gran amigo. Gracias, Leo. Saludos a tu familia y a cada uno de ustedes. Les mando un fuerte abrazo, familia. Dios los bendiga. Buenas noches y nos vemos mañana, Dios mediante. Estamos vivos. Gracias a Dios. Paz y bien. Paz y bien, familia. ¿Cómo están? Perdón que no estaba poniéndoles mucha atención, pero estábamos aquí en Instagram Live. Más adelante lo vamos a hacer aquí en YouTube de manera completa para que puedan ver la entrevista y la presentación de Leo Severino. Y también vamos a hacer, estamos planeando un programa muy padre, a ver si lo lanzamos en unos 10 días más. Se va a llamar Héroes Anónimos. Héroes Anónimos, así es que les voy a hablar un poquito, no mucho porque todavía no está bien planeado, pero va a ser aquí en YouTube live, en vivo, donde les voy a pedir a cada uno de ustedes que identifiquen a un héroe anónimo en su casa, en su comunidad, en su pueblo, en su ciudad, en su región. Alguien que ustedes lo vean como un héroe anónimo, que lo que hace esa persona realmente es algo bueno para este mundo, ¿no? Y este mundo es mejor gracias a lo que hace esa, esa persona. Entonces, ya que lo identifiquen, les vamos a decir cómo mandarnos un video acerca de ese héroe que ustedes están proponiendo. Y lo van a mandar ese video a un mail que les vamos a dar. Les digo todo esto para que vayan pensando en el héroe anónimo, ¿no? Después les vamos a decir cómo van a hacer el video, nos lo mandan, se lo vamos a mandar todos los videos a una mesa directiva de muchos voluntarios que van a participar para que evalúen todos esos videos. Vamos a escoger unos cuantos, no sé todavía si van a ser 10, 12 o 20 videos. Y de esos videos, entonces, va a haber un patrocinador y también por medio de una organización que vamos a mandar una cantidad de dinero, no sé, lo que sea. Vamos a poner, por ejemplo, que sean $100, ¿no? Y con ese dinero, esa persona que ustedes escogieron, los que ganaron, los 12 que ganaron, les vamos a dar una semana para ver qué harían con esos $100 o $200 o 10,000 pesos, lo que sea. No sabemos todavía cuál va a ser la cantidad. ¿Qué harían con ese dinero para que este mundo sea un mejor lugar en una semana? Y los que los propusieron van a hacer un videíto de no más de 3 minutos sobre lo que hicieron. Después nos van a mandar los videos, los 12 escogidos que les mandamos el dinero, perdón, y vamos a poner esos videos en YouTube para que todo mundo los vea y voten. Y después vamos a tener un sistema para evaluar y escoger al ganador. Y a ese ganador se le va a dar otra cantidad de dinero para que siga haciendo el bien. Y después volvemos a hacer el programa otra vez. Va a estar muy divertido, va a estar muy padre. Se llama Héroes Anónimos. Apenas nos están... la idea esta que se me vino a la cabeza, se la pasé a una amiga productora que me está ayudando simplemente a estructurarlo para poder hacerlo aquí en YouTube. Más adelante les voy a contar de Héroes Anónimos para que estén pendientes. Mientras tanto, les mando un fuerte abrazo. Los quiero. Dios los bendiga. Buenas noches y nos vemos mañana en Facebook, en el Rosario por el Mundo, a las 2 de la tarde, más o menos. 2 de la tarde. Hora de México, Rosario por el Mundo, la FAM. Perdón, ya me entró la alergia otra vez por hablar mucho. Recuerden que la familia que reza unida permanece unida. Paz y bien. Ánimo.